Insanity is doing the exact same fucking thing over and over again, expecting shit to change. That is crazy.
Welcome back to Cartridge Based Radio. This is Brad, and I am joined as always by Donald.
Hey.
So, this is another What Did You Play week, and I am just going to go out on a limb and say that you played some Far Cry 3.
You should set up a booth at the county fair and just predict things, because that was dead on.
Now, with this booth at the county fair, would I be predicting things about the people that come up to me, or just general? Be like, yeah, I predict that a person you don't know over on the other side of the state is playing Far Cry 3, and the people at the booth would be like, that seems feasible.
And then you'd be like, I predict your pants look stupid with that shirt.
So it's just an insult booth now.
Hey, that's hurtful. It's like, I predicted you would think that.
People would be like, hey, you live out in the booties. You should be amazed that I'm even wearing a shirt.
You're not wearing a shirt, but you are wearing a bandolier. Yes, I played Far Cry 3, and speaking of not buttoning your shirt up, I met Buck.
Oh, Buck is my favorite.
I just want to be clear, anyone who's this deep into this What Did You Play and my Far Cry 3 updates, I'm spoiling this thing up to the end, so if you haven't played it, I'm sorry. It's 6 years old now?
Yeah, at least.
You've had time. So
I'm going to jump in and also say that if you're listening to this and you're worried about spoilers, it's an Ubisoft game. The story is not great. I'm not spoiling the ending of War and Peace for you here.
It took an interesting turn for me this week. So I met Buck. He's a man with a tattoo of a buck on his chest.
Yes.
But it's not cool. It's not up near his neck. It's just in this weird zone, over his pectoral muscles and his abdomen. Someone didn't align the texture correctly. Because it's in a weird place.
Yes.
I met Buck, and he wants to go on treasure hunts with me, which you alluded to a while ago, and I didn't know what you're talking about, so I was like, Brad probably doesn't know what he's talking about.
As usual.
Buck wants me to find a mystical knife that somebody else wants, so I imagine that's going to be a plot twist.
They're going to have a raffle for it later on. I mean, not to spoil it, but there's going to be a big church raffle.
There's churches on this island? I'm probably not welcome there.
There's one that's set up specifically for having raffles.
Oh. The Church of the Raffle.
Yes.
So this is kind of the moment where I think someone on the design team was playing a lot of Tomb Raider, because Far Cry 3 turned into Tomb Raider.
Yeah, a little bit.
And what bothered me is the escape exit to all these mysterious tombs that I have to use special compasses to open doors are 5 feet from the opening of a giant hole in the ceiling that you could just look down and be like, oh, look, an ancient Chinese temple. I could just get a rope and go down there and get the treasure.
Well, I think on a previous episode we established that the people who live on this island spend all their time hanging out with Dennis watching 80s sitcoms. So, no one has explored this island.
I mean, when you gotta get through season 6 of Frasier, you gotta get through season 6 of Frasier. So a couple things bugged me in this section. One, you're on a boat. There's a bunch of dead people on the boat, and I just totally happened upon them. I don't know how they got arrows in their bodies. So I hack a computer, which suddenly a party boy who likes skydiving with his friends and drinking on an island knows how to hack PCs. It's okay, Ubisoft. But then there's a bomb attached to the laptop in case it gets hacked. And I was like, this is specific. And the boat starts sinking, and halfway through getting out of the boat, you get attacked underwater by somebody. And I'm begging game developers, stop doing that. If a boat's sinking, the enemy's not oh, there's my arch enemy. I'm going to attack him underwater. That puts both their lives at risk.
Now, here's my issue with levels like this. You've gone swimming before, right?
Yes.
Have you ever opened your eyes underwater without, like, goggles or a swim mask or anything?
I'm not going to let bacteria into my eye holes.
Okay, well, I have. You can't see anything. It looks like, if you imagine somebody with the strongest regular, land walking eyeglasses prescription, not wearing his glasses, that's what it looks like when you're underwater.
Well, were you underwater in the crystal clear waters around Rook Island?
I don't think it has to do with water clarity. I think it has to do with physics or something. Human eyes weren't designed to see underwater.
That's true, and also fighting underwater is just stupid for both parties.
Yes.
And I hate that in any game with a boat sinking scene where, like, it's going down and either they're shooting at you, I'm looking at you, Uncharted 3, or in this one they just, like, grab you and, like, make it a shark that attacks you. That makes more sense.
I don't think sharks like going into sinking boats.
Yeah, I mean, sharks aren't stupid, I suppose.
The shark would have already had to have been on the boat. Like, it's a cruise ship for sharks, and it starts sinking, and then they're like, oh, food!
I really want to invest into your cruise ship for sharks idea here. This is pretty good.
I'll set up a Patreon.
So anyway, every time you do this, Buck gets mad at you for not getting him the knife. But then he's like, oh, I'm kidding. I knew it wasn't there. I'm like, come on, Buck. I'm up to the part where I got the knife, but I haven't completed the final leg of that story. I like jumping off the cliff into the water. That was pretty cool. Man, that game is pretty.
It really, really is. When you have a game that already just in general looks good and then you set it, in a beautiful environment, that's just, it's a good day.
For some reason, I don't know what I did wrong, but everybody was running me over for like 45 minutes. They would just come out of nowhere to run me over, and it's my guys. I don't know what they had against me, so I hate them more now. I should liberate them from the island, if you know what I mean.
I think I follow.
But that's my Far Cry. I think I'm like 35 hours in now.
Wow.
And the most fun I'm having in that game is not engaging with the story.
Yeah.
I do keep dipping back in the story every once in a while just to kind of push it forward and see if I get to talk to Dennis again. Because it feels like they're keeping me from Dennis.
That's how they keep you motivated.
I'm starting to know what the pirates feel like. Like, they don't get to hang with Dennis, and I'm like, I gotta hang with Dennis again.
Yeah.
Other than that, I have been playing some Dungeons and Dragons on a website. It's called Rollgate, where you can play asynchronous Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay.
So you got a dungeon master and then the party, and you just kind of, whenever you have time, pop in, say your piece, and then go out, and the story just keeps flowing like that. It's a pretty neat way to play.
Yeah. So, if you don't remember the website, listeners, you can probably just do a Google search for Dungeon Master, and I'm sure you'll find it without any problems.
Yeah, don't do that. Or do images, safe search off. So that's what I have been playing. So now I'm going to take away the reins of hosting from you, and you're going to tell me what you were playing.
I have actually not been playing much of anything these last 2 weeks. And the reason is that I have been watching a lot of the NHL playoffs this year. And it has been really, really great.
Nerd!
Yeah, I know.
So how are the hockey games going?
Oh, usually the way it works is you get the first round and you're all excited because hockey's finally on TV and you can watch it and there's all these teams. And then after the first round or so, you kind of wear out a little bit and then you don't watch as much. But this has been the opposite. I wasn't too taken with the matchups in the first round, but since then it's just gotten better and better. And I don't know exactly when this episode's going to air. We we record these ahead of time a little bit, and we're gonna have to do them in sequence because of your Far Cry playthrough. Right now we've just gotten to the conference final, so we're down to 4 teams, and I swear we've got the 4 fastest teams left. They're just flying up and down the ice. Every game looks like it's Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals, and there's not going to be any ice left by the end of these series. It'll just all have been melted away with how fast these guys are going up and down it.
So, for people who aren't watching the hockey finals like me, who is in the 4?
We are down to Tampa Bay, Washington, the Vegas Golden Knights, and the Winnipeg Jets. And at the start of the playoffs, I probably would have told you I wasn't that excited about having 3 out of the 4 teams be... They're newer teams relative to the other teams in the league. Like, Tampa's been around for over 25 years now.
Don't be that person. There's room for hockey for everybody, Brad.
When you first start watching a sport, all the teams that exist, in your mind, you think they've existed forever. And they all have, like, these super long histories. And then, like, all the new teams are like, oh, they've only been around 20 years. Whereas, like, the St. Louis Blues have been around since the 1400s. And then you find out that they were actually just around since 1967. And, I've warmed up to the newer teams mostly. Vegas is a great story. It's their first year in the league, and they're in the conference finals. And they're amazing, to have done that so quickly.
That city is crazy for that team.
Yeah, every time they show it, the fans are just nuts. Winnipeg is great. It's the only Canadian team left in the playoffs. A Canadian team hasn't won the Stanley Cup since 1993. A couple have gotten sort of close, but that's a great story. Washington's a great story. They've had a really good team for about a decade now, but they kept fizzling out in the early rounds of the playoffs. So so that's really interesting. And then Tampa is just a garbage team that they don't deserve to have a team as good as they do, but what can you do?
How did my Predators do?
They got to the second round, and they had a very close, very hard-fought series against Winnipeg that they ended up losing in 7 games.
I hope Canada does well. I hope we don't have a repeat of that time that Canada burned down one of their own cities because they were mad at Boston.
Yeah, that was Vancouver back in 2011. They lost the cup, and the city declared war on itself for a day or two. It could be worse. Back in the 50s, Montreal pretty much burned itself down after one of their players got suspended for the rest of the season and playoffs. And like 25 people got hurt. So, you can talk about sports riots and, the falling apart of society, but it was actually worse in the 50s.
So Canadians have the general stereotype of they're very nice. And from my experience, Canadians are very nice. But it must be just like a bottled up thing that every once in a while has to explode when hockey's involved. And then 6 city blocks are just going to be gone.
Yeah, it's like 2 inert substances, hockey and Canadian people, and you put them together and it becomes explosive. Like Americans and everything.
Yeah, Americans and everything. Americans and Pokemon. It's out of control. No, I hope Winnipeg does well. It'd be nice for a Canadian team to win that. I'm sure they would enjoy that very much.
Yeah, that would be great. Personally, I'm pulling for the Washington Capitals. Their best player is one of my favorite players ever. It also, Vegas won it all. That would be neat also. So, really, any outcome that isn't Tampa Bay would just be fantastic.
All right, you hear it first. Brad hates Florida. All right, so sounds like you had fun watching hockey.
Yeah. And it sounds like you've made some real progress in Far Cry and got to meet one of the more interesting characters to talk to.
I'm really interested in where that's going by a couple things Buck has said that slightly unclear.
Yeah.
I have a feeling I know where it's going, and I have a feeling it's going to be real dark, but I'm not jumping to any conclusions because he's my treasure hunting buddy.
Well, there you go. It's always good to have a buddy. All right, well, that'll wrap up this week's show, and I'll be back hosting this in 2 weeks, and next week we'll have a regular show for you, so stay tuned for that.
Ovechkin creeping back in. Hands back over to Backstrom. Kuznetsov to Backstrom once more. Oshie inside the four-man defensive box.